What's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent, and today we're going to be talking about PvP within Anthem, or the potential for PvP to be inside of Anthem, and really kind of a meta commentary on how nobody really likes it when one game tries to do more than its original intention or conception. And I think that's a little bit short-sighted, especially in today's industry and today's community. We play games as a service. They make games as a service, and when a game is very obviously a service, a world to live in, to play in, that's going to be living and breathing, such as Anthem, that is going to be ever expanded, I think it's incredibly short-sighted and very ignorant for people to say, well, there just should never be PvP. And if you have your reasons why you think it shouldn't be in the game, absolutely, let's voice those and hear those. But I'm reading a lot in comments, on forums, and a lot of content creators talking about PvP on Anthem, and almost nobody's really advocating for it. So of course, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. I'm going to play the other side of the fence, especially since my bias is towards PvEVP games. The new Hunt Showdown, I think, is a fantastic example. I love games such as MOBAs, right? Or sandbox MMOs like Albion Online that really have that sexy balance of cat and mouse and player versus environment that at the same time is also versus players. And I grew up on games like Halo, Gears of War, and even Call of Duty. And within those games, there was a lot of controversy if one really should focus on just the campaign, if it should just focus on the esports, if they really should be making these weird branching off game modes. But if you lived through those games as a child growing up, you know how Call of Duty started out as a single-player game, really focused on that, and then went heavy into esports. But then even with Modern Warfare 2, it actually branched off with a co-op mode, and then we also had this new Zombies game mode, and it's like, what the crap? Call of Duty can do single-player co-op and frickin' MLG legit PvP? What is this? Fantastic stuff there. Now, Gears of War, also another game that kind of similar to Halo, it had a campaign and it had its multiplayer, and it did focus on sports, but it also did have that campaign. But then with Gears of War 2 and onward, it actually added in a new co-op mode, but at the same time, its campaign was co-op, so I can't say it never did have that, but it did add in these extra game modes, and it became known for those game modes. So even though those weren't technically like games as a service, they kind of were. And this is also the case for many fighting games or many sequential games. And of course, games as a service, we see lots of things expand and evolve, and they become more than what they were originally intended to be. And sometimes it is to a detriment. Sometimes it flourishes and it becomes something special and unique. So one example I can give is Team Fortress 2. Which started as a PvP-focused game, never really esporty, but it focused as PvP and casual and silly and fun. And then they actually had a kind of relatively serious cooperative PvE, or man versus machine, mode that they added that was actually incredibly engrossing, and now even to the point where Overwatch is copying that for many of its events, or at least in the image of that. So there's a lot of cases of games starting with one scenario and then moving to the other, where it focused on one aspect and moved to the other, kind of ping-ponged, maybe expanded and ballooned out and added brand new things. And I just think it's really shallow to look at a game and just see its original inception as all that it could be, or that's the only direction that the game could be, and then it can't be enhanced with other very strange flavors. You can have something that's sweet and salty at the same time. I really think so. So, Anthem, PvP, why would it work? Why wouldn't it work? I think the first thing to think about, though, is that immediately, honestly, like, I don't mean to make fun of you guys, but you have this very, like, ground level perspective of you're looking at what the game is right now, which is a looter shooter with RPG mechanics and progression and a lot of weird, strange customization that could complicate PvP to a great extent. It could make it very unfun, and we do see that in a lot of PvP games where you have such variety of customization and you have such gaps in good and bad builds. Sometimes it works, such like in MOBAs, it can kind of work with skill builds and item builds, things like that. Not always super fun, but it kind of works in certain situations and scenarios. But you can actually create a PvP mode inside of Anthem, which might kind of go against the general flow of the main game, but I don't see why you couldn't just have maybe almost like a hero shooter example. Like, you could have very specific builds that are popular in the PvE. You can have those cherry-picked to be heroes that you actually play as, or classes that are pre-selected inside of the PvP mode, and then that way it's balanced. So even though, yes, if you had full customization, you could totally make a completely unbalanced build, but that would be somewhat unfun in PvP. So then just cherry pick certain builds and then put them in the PvP, and then that would solve like everything. You could have completely separate balancing. I mean, there's lots of things that developers could do. There's also a lot of easy things that, I mean, you could say it's a watered down PvP mode, but in the end, you know, I think it's possible to create a unique and interesting game mode within the Anthem universe. And I think it could be a lot of fun. I mean, of course, I'm somebody who thinks of like, you know, the sky's the limit. So it could be like as innovative as man versus machine, but reverse. So Team Fortress 2 went from PvP to PvE with one of its game modes. So why can't Anthem be a PvE game that then morphs into PvP in some way? I mean, even if it's PvP to the extent where it's asymmetrical, like a player maybe turns into a monster, a creature, or maybe they have some really ridiculous sort of juggernauty type of, you know, like literal, like Titanic type of, you know, frame that they can play in, and, you know, players have to like basically giant kill it. So it's like 4 versus 1 or something like that. Maybe a rogue javelin. I don't see why Monster Hunter wouldn't do PvP. I feel like it would be very easy to explain canonically why some hunters who maybe go against the beliefs, or they go rogue, or they become greedy and they kill too many monsters or whatever, and they themselves need to be culled. I don't see why they can't be like a hunting or an evading type of Monster Hunter thing. I think that could be kind of cool, actually. It could be pretty fun. I mean, we see what happens in Dark Souls. So, you know, it doesn't fit for every game, I'm sure. But the thing is I think developers can, you know, if given enough time and if the community gives them enough love and support, and with, you know, open-mindedness, I think they can come up with something that's creative enough to be fun. So immediately people are just going to say no, flat out, no, I don't want it. And they don't do a really good job explaining it. I think it's just because it's going to be unbalanced. No, because it's just going to be a shit show just because I said so. I think that's really unfair. I think it's unfair because you can look at direct competitors like Warframe and Path of Exile and see that, oh, they're looter games with incredible customization and their PvP fucking sucks. Well, okay, that's fair, but maybe they just suck at making PvP games. I know that might sound weird because the Warframe developers did help with Unreal Tournament, but at the same time, I also was there from Warframe's development of all its PvP, and it was very, very clear that even without the customization, they had no idea how to design the maps. If you might notice, the maps have been getting bigger and bigger in PvP as the game has gone on. That's because they're starting to learn that fucking ninjas in space who can bounce off walls at like 1,000,000 miles per hour with all these crazy acrobatic abilities, they might actually need some bigger maps. Which, if you remember, a lot of like, I guess on Quake, it had smaller maps because, you know, it's more of an agility-based game, but Unreal had pretty larger maps because it was more of a velocity-based game, and of course, Tribes Ascend. So basically, I honestly, I'm not saying it's the type of game like Warframe is a bad PvP game because it's a Warframe. No, I'm saying the developers don't know how to make PvP with Warframe because they've only been making Warframe in a certain way, and it is an afterthought. So no, I don't want PvP if it's an afterthought, if it's going to be light. But just because it comes after launch and just because it isn't part of the main concept doesn't mean it can't be some sort of like newfound passion, and it can't actually have its own community and have its own game mode and own game flow, because frankly, I play Team Fortress 2 for man versus machine. I enjoy Gears of War with its horde mode. That's what I played most, actually. And in fact, for Call of Duty, many of you guys play just the zombies. Like a lot of, I would dare say most people who play Call of Duty, like right now, most consistently are playing it for the zombies. That's really out of my ass, but just from talking to people and meeting people, I'm just saying, you know, like, I know I didn't go into the nitty gritty of why Anthem would make a good PvP game, but a lot of people have already gone into the nitty gritty of what Anthem is, or it might turn into. People have already talked about why it's a bad PvP game, but I just wanted to just throw all of their videos in the fucking dumpster, because essentially it all boils down to, well, Anthem is going in this direction and it just can't do the same thing with PvP. And I'm saying, well, like, duh. Like, obviously, it can't do the exact same thing with PvP. No, it wouldn't work exactly the same, because it is a PvE game at its heart and core. So its PvP mode would have to operate with different rules. It would have to be strange, but that doesn't mean it would be estranged. It doesn't mean it would be some small little addition. It doesn't mean it has to be a complete afterthought just because it comes after. That's all I wanted to say. That is where my passion lies, not in the small little details, because frankly, a lot of people don't know what they're talking about. So no, there's lots of games that have gone through changes, that have evolved, and have had, second lives and rebirths because of it even. And, frankly, I mean, you could just look at Overwatch, a fantastic game as a service that has interesting co-op evented in. So why can't Anthem do that? Why can't Anthem have event PvPs? Like maybe some sort of rogue squadron of javelins comes through and, for a limited time, people can do invasions or what have you. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. And I talk with developers and I see games develop and I play these games as a service and I have no idea because the sky's the limit. So instantaneously just saying, nope, PvP can't work because it was originally a PvE game, too much customization, too much tomfuckery and foolery. Nope, just simply can't do it no matter what. Well, you're wrong. And you're making these huge 20-minute, 10-minute videos and like you're saying a lot of words, but like you're actually getting nowhere with the conversation. And that's coming from me. And I ranted and rambled and this was a whole lot of reiteration. So that's that. Much love, friends and family. Keep the hype alive, and I'll see you again next time.